I'm Linda Leon, and today we're going to be interviewing Phil Muls on his outstanding book, Mind on Fire. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lina.
When I read your book, I was absolutely fascinated. I looked at a situation where I had never seen a book written that way before because you wrote it from a very conversational standpoint, and it was a lot of interaction between some people that had helped you along your journey, which was your psychiatrist, and then you had input along the way from your family members. So it gave the book a much more real feeling, and I felt like I was actually living through those pages. How did you come up with the idea to address the book in that manner?
Well, Linda, it all started with me looking for a way to lose myself in a new hobby in the first months of my being sober. So I tried many things like photography and even painting and so on. But in the end, writing was what attracted me. And I started with some travel stories. So the travel stories that you will find in the book, the settings in Bangkok, in Singapore, in Moscow, in Beijing, and so on, those stories came first. But then, after a while, when people gave me feedback on the stories and said, hey, this is great, I started to play with the idea of writing a book. So I integrated those travel stories into, you could say, the recovery period, or the first 18 months of recovery. And I decided the best way to do that would be to intertwine the travel stories with therapy sessions, therapy dialogues between the therapist or the psychiatrist and the patient, my alter ego, Peter Baar. That's the way it came about, this somewhat creative format of the book.
It's an amazing format, and what I like about it, as I said, is the realism of it. And some of your stories, they just impact the heart. I would like for you to tell people how you came about becoming an alcoholic, because a lot of people don't realize it doesn't have to be over an extended period of time. In your case, one specific thing happened. Can you explain that to the audience?
Well, I've always been a thinker. Since I was very small, I had my concerns, my worries, my ruminations. I was always overthinking stuff. So my mind never stopped. I was also highly sensitive to my environment and to my own emotions. So when I was 17 and I was, on a summer camp in Switzerland, for the first time ever, I tried white wine. And it was not so much the taste of it that I liked. In fact, I didn't like the taste. But the feeling that came over me, the absolute, calm, the blissful mindfulness, the silence, the stopping of all the thoughts and ruminations, I really fell in love with white wine or with alcohol right there and then. And that love affair never stopped, because to me, it was not about feeling great or, euphoria or any kind of feeling like that. It was just stopping my mind, stopping the overthinking and the constant worries. That's what did it. And
wow.
Of course, when my life became more busy and more stressful, I needed more and more of the stuff.
Wow. And another thing, people often say, well, if you start, you could just put down the drink and then it's all over. But that's not often true either, is it?
No, absolutely not. Especially, let's say, in my case, it was very, very complicated, very complex. The roots of my drinking were so deep and were so entrenched in my being that there was not just any stopping. It was just an impossibility to even consider stopping. It was my lifeline. In the book, I compare it to eating and breathing and taking in all the necessary things that you need to live. Well, to me, unfortunately, alcohol became such a necessity.
I like what you said just then, because you mentioned the complications that were going on in your life. So that leads us to say that alcoholism is not just picking up a drink, but it might have some mental connections. And so therefore it's not just a physical ailment, but it can also be a mental ailment. Can you discuss how that might relate to your life, and what can a person do that has a family member that's dealing with this condition? How can they begin to see that it's beyond the physical, that it has something to do with the perceptions of the mind?
Yes. Well, I've always been very driven and very ambitious, also as a mechanism of denial that I'm deep down I'm very afraid of life and even more afraid of death, and to have that fear and to deny that that deep concern, I started to functionally use alcohol as a way of easing my concerns. And like you say, there is a physical dependency. Your body starts to get used to alcohol, and over time you need more and more of the stuff to get the same kind of effect. But in my case, more importantly, the mental addiction, the mental dependency on alcohol, to ease my worries, to ease my concerns, to stop my mind, that was the real addiction. That was the real dependency that made it impossible for me to stop. And to your question, like what should the family members do when they see this happening? Well, I'm afraid that nobody saw it happening. Meaning, you really build it up slowly. In the beginning, maybe it's one drink every 2 days, and then it becomes one drink a day, and so on. It gradually increases, and people start maybe to notice that you drink more and more, but they don't see it really as a problem. I've never been that typical drunk that slurs his words and almost falls asleep. I've never been that. For me, it was always a matter of just staying calm and getting enough of it so I could still function and even be very good in what I did.
So the terminology for that is called a high-functioning alcoholic. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how that's different from the standard alcoholic that most people consider?
Yes. A functional or a high-functioning alcoholic is a person who is maybe intelligent and hardworking and definitely very determined and ambitious to make something of himself, to excel. In my case, that was in business life. I rapidly rose in the ranks of many companies and became more and more responsible for large areas of business. And the more responsibility, the more stress, of course, and the more stress, the more I needed alcohol to calm myself down and to keep myself functioning. But at the same time, alcohol was indeed a great tool for me to function. I know that might sound very strange, but I always was careful not to drink too much, but just enough so I could really reach peak level performance. And I know that sounds strange, but for a long time that's how it was. Until, of course, you cannot function anymore and you fall off a cliff.
I don't think that it sounds strange. I think when I hear you talking about it and then I reflect on the book, and I think if anybody picks up the book and reads it, they're going to have a greater understanding of what you just meant. But it's really logical what you're saying in the mind state that you were in. So I think that's a real good key for families to understand that the person that is suffering, their loved one that is suffering with this condition, they're not thinking from the same mindset of a person who's not drinking, and just that understanding alone might be able to help them to have a little bit more patience or go the distance and not throw in the towel on the situation, but to hang on a little bit longer and try to help them through the adversity. So
yep.
What was the turning point for you? What was the thing that said, this is my rock bottom?
Well, I reached the point, and I think most high-functioning alcoholics do, I reached the point where things started to not go so well, started to deteriorate, because the alcohol level that I consumed in a day was so high that it was almost impossible to be excellent in what I was doing throughout the full day. And then you start to doubt yourself, and you start to drink even more, and you start to make mistakes, and that was really the turning point for me. I described it in detail in the book. I even considered, killing myself at some point because I couldn't see any way out. And by considering that, I also saw that there might be a way out in recovery. And it took, I think, reaching a rock bottom moment like that in order to accept that I had to do something. And on top of that, my wife, at exactly the right moment, announced that she would leave me if I would not stop, if I didn't stop drinking. And that momentum, that little magic, I call it, that little miracle almost that she gave me by putting a notification on my plate at exactly the right time, that made me do it. That made me go into rehab and into recovery.
You have gone through a lot of traumatic experiences, too, and those are outlined in the chapters of your book. I don't want to go through a lot of them because I want the people to be interested to read so they can learn more. But certain chapters really stood out to me. You have one chapter in there called Hubris that stood out, even though all of them did, but I'm talking about the ones where I just sat there and just froze when I was reading the book. I'm like, oh, my God, So that one, the one about the Indian wedding, that was potent. It's just like I could see so many things going on, and, there was a time of great joy and elation in that chapter, and then at the end, things fall apart in a way that you wouldn't believe, and your life is soaking all of this in, and all these little things are adding up to helping you to get away from the condition that you were in. But,
exactly.
Bits and pieces. And then you talked about a dream in the book that was very impactful. It's, just so many things. I would encourage a person that if they are struggling with the addiction, or if they know someone that is, or if they're a family member, you really need to get this book. And this is not just a person coming on trying to do a sales pitch here. This book contains real life situations that are so raw and so open that you're going to glean from it. Because most of the time when people write things, they try to coat it, make it pretty, make it shiny, appealing. But you don't do that. You just pull the cover off and say, this is what it is. And if a person reads that, it might jolt them into knowing that they need to make a change. So I think it's just something that's worth having.
Thank you for saying that, because that's exactly the impact that I want with the book. The good and the bad and the ugly. I don't think that I would be where I am today, 5 years sober, without having experienced all these things. And therefore I wanted to show to people on the same road to recovery that it's okay to have a lot of bad stuff and ugly stuff happening to you, as long as you turn it into insights and into good stuff. And I think that's what I've tried to do with the book, and I hope that other people will benefit from it.
You did. You did a really, really good job at that. Now let's fast forward a little bit. Okay, we're past the stage of where you're no longer denying it. You've hit rock bottom. You've got to make a change. And your family's still standing there. They're pretty upset, but they're still standing there. I mean, they're not letting you go, but they're like, you need to get yourself together. Okay, so we're down that road. Describe the moment when you finally felt that you have reached that breakthrough point where you knew that if you went this one last time to try to get recovery, you were going to make it. What was that like?
Well, it's really a feeling of last chances. It's really a feeling of now or never. The previous times when I tried to stop and I relapsed, I never had that same rock bottom feeling like, this is it, this is the lowest I can go. I can only say that each addict that is in recovery will know what I'm talking about when I say rock bottom. It means there is no hope. There is absolutely no hope unless you turn it around. Either you continue, and that's a sure road to the end, or you turn it around, and then it will be a very, very difficult road, but at least there's hope. And that is the point of the turnaround point, you can say, and it's very, extremely, very painful to experience that, but without it, there's just no basis, there's no resolve, there's no solid backbone which you will need to abstain, because there's no doubt that the first 6 months, the first 12 months, the first 18 months, after so many years of constant drinking, are going to be really, really tough. There's no denying that, and that's also what the book says. There is no easy way. You just have to do the hard time. But if you are determined and you follow your guide, I think you can make it, and that's the whole point of the book.
That's good. That's good, and I like the word you mentioned, hope, because that is, it might be frail, but it's unbreakable. You just need a little bit. You just need like a drip of hope.
Yes.
to catapult you to keep going. And
absolutely.
And I think that's wonderful that you could state it that way. So I want to ask you a question. One of the problems that you had, that you were dealing with, was the state of religion and how that impacted your life. And then as you went through your recovery on this journey, you learned about spirituality and found that to be more healing. What are some of the things that you've learned from including spirituality as part of your recovery?
Yes, that's a very good question, Linda. Like I said before, I was an overthinker. To me, only the analysis and the ratio counted, not the emotions, and definitely not the spiritual side of things. I didn't even realize that existed. But in recovery, again, a small miracle happened, because I started to discover another me, a deeper me, below my thoughts and emotions. Actually, by writing stuff, I could feel that a deeper level in myself was speaking. You can call it subconscious, or you can call it your soul or your spirit. But another level, a deeper stratum, was talking and was speaking, and that I discovered was the real me, not my mind, not my thoughts and emotions, but the deeper me was the real me. I started reading a lot of books on mindfulness, on the power of now by Eckhart Tolle, books from the psychiatrist Irving Yalom, Michael Singer, very famous writers in that side of the literature. And I discovered a whole new world, because indeed you can call it mindfulness, some call it Zen or Buddhism or other types of meditation, but it all boils down to discovering that second perspective on things, watching yourself think and taking a step back and looking at the deeper you, feeling the deeper you, feeling the silence in you. And I'm not saying that I've become a specialist in that, because I'm still a thinker, but at least I can step back and see myself think, which is quite a difference with, when I was younger.
I had that same experience in my journey, and I think the seed to that coming into your life is when you were at the Indian wedding, and I think it was the grandfather, made a comment that the real you is like the bottom of a lake, peaceful
exactly.
and calm. The emotional side of you is like the ripples that are on the lake, and at some point you have to come back to that calm state of mind in order to really experience life at its fullest. And I think for me, I was raised in a religious home and loved my upbringing in terms of that. But as I grew older, I saw a lot of, I don't want to call it discrepancies, but that's the best word that I can use to define it.
Yes.
And discrepancies in the way things were taught. And I had to get away from that, because those teachings were, they didn't allow my best self to come forward. They kept me kind of trapped.
Yeah.
And I could see the God that they were referring to in regard to how they were structuring it, but it just didn't seem like it was balanced, and so I began to begin to see things on a more spiritual line, where God has so much more for me than what was in religion. It's just amazing, and I began to see that there is a power that is inside of you that wants to become released so that you can impact the world, so that you can make a change not only in your life but in other people's lives. But if you're constantly bogged down with fear or feeling like you keep making mistakes and you're this great sinner, you can't reach that stage. And so I began to listen to books and read information, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. So it's still the same God that I've always served, but it's just seeing him in a different state. It's a universal plane. It's like this source is available to everyone to pull from, to learn from, and to grow from. And to me, it transcends religion. So when I saw that you went through something similar, I could really relate to that, and I said, good for you. Good for you.
Definitely. You word it perfectly, Linda. Indeed, like so many people in school, you get the whole dogmatic scripture kind of traditional way of looking at God and sin and redemption and all that. And I thought that was really restrictive and kind of limiting me rather than opening up to my own deeper potential. So I totally agree with you. Spirituality is something completely different than what they, teach you or what the church might impose on people. So I fully agree with your view that religion or spirituality is like a universal force that you can feel within you and in nature and so on, and it can open you up to new things. And that's what I also try to use in the book.
That's wonderful. That is so wonderful. Well, we are running out of time here. I can't believe 30 minutes have almost passed. It's been great. I've really enjoyed the interview, but I'd like to give the last few moments over to you. If you were to tell anybody anything about your state of alcoholism, or if you were talking to a family member, what message would you have for them? What is the key thing or the main thing you want someone that's either going through it or a family member that's dealing with it to know?
Well, I think what I want to say at this point is that things might look hopeless. They might look like there's no way out. But what I've learned is that feeling, that exact feeling of hopelessness, that feeling of gloom and doom, you can use that. You can use that to find the force in you that can turn things around, that can make you recover. So to have that power in you, you need to tap into it. And one of the ways of tapping into it, how strange that may seem, is by just experiencing the bad stuff. Just let it happen, experience it, don't deny it anymore, because it will grow stronger and stronger in you, and it will turn into a feeling like, yes, I can turn this around. So if there's any lesson to be learned, I guess, from the book, that is, no matter how deep you are, no matter how dark things might seem, there is a way out. There is a way out, and it can be done without alcohol or without drugs. And I would recommend to people who are considering quitting or stopping, or people who are already on the road to recovery but relapse or hesitating or doubting themselves, please read the book, see what I experienced. And, I'm still sober after 5 years, and I would never have given myself any chance of doing that. So thank you for listening, and good luck.
Oh, that's wonderful, the way you concluded that. And I need to tell people how long you were an alcoholic, because I didn't mention that. But this was a 25-year journey for you, and you got over that wonderfully. And I cannot leave this interview without mentioning your wife, because she was, to me, a rock star in that book. I mean, her feet were planted, this is the way it's going to be. She really helped you. So say a few words about your wife and how things are now since your recovery, and then we'll close out the program.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you're right. She's the hero in the story. She's by me. She did not become angry or hysterical or reproachful or whatever. She just stood by me until she saw it was the right time, until she saw it turning inside me, and that she could tell me, it's now or never. This is your last chance. Either you lose me or you think, my love forever, but then you need to stop drinking. And she timed it so perfectly and in such a, I guess, a feminine, subtle way. And that's what I also describe in the book. And I'm glad, Linda, that you noticed that as being one of the key elements in the book that, turned things around for me. And I must say, after my becoming sober, it was not so easy the first couple of months, because you need to reintegrate into the marriage, into society in general, without alcohol, and that doesn't make it too simple. But I'm glad to say that now that we're like 5 years further, our marriage is stronger than ever, and I'm very, very grateful that I did that. That I did turn things around to keep my marriage and also the respect of my family.
Yes, I'm so glad you did too, and you all did some amazing things. You took some time off just to go and learn and to be together, and I think that was amazing. So you got a wonderful story, Phil, and I really hope that so many people identify with your story and support your work, because it's just something that needs to get out there. And I believe that once you read it, if you know somebody else that has that condition, you're going to recommend the book. It's
exactly.
going to be it's going to be something that'll be easy to refer, because it's just so authentic. And I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to meet you and to read the book, and to know that there is a resource out there to help people who have these conditions or their family members. And if you would like to learn more about Phil, you can go to his website at philipmulsauthor.com, and you can learn more about him there, and even contact him there, because there is a contact page on the sheet if you would like to ask for additional information. And you can go on Amazon and find his book, or probably wherever books are sold, because these days, a bookstore can bring a book in as long as it's online. So thank you so much for being our guest, and I wish you much luck, many, many, many more years of an outstanding family life in full recovery.
Thank you, Linda. It was a pleasure.